Section 6 of a second Rubaiyat Miscellany. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The versions of H. G. Keane. The Real Khayyam. In Macmillan's Magazine for November 1887, volume 57, page 27, Mr. H. G. Keane, a retired East Indiaman familiar with Persian, had an article entitled Omar Khayyam, in which he included a number of original versions, not with the intention, he says, of shocking the admirers of Mr. Fitzgerald by an attempt to compete with his poetical treatment, but offered as illustrative of the real Khayyam in his disjointed manner. He gives Fitzgerald due credit, but while he calls his quatrains as unquestionably among the fine things in modern English verse, he avers that they give no accurate representations of the original in any of their versions, as indeed the variations of successive editions do themselves tend to show. Omar, he continues, is no more coherent than Martial, as anyone will see who looks into Mr. Winfield's version in Trübner's series. Here is the epigram of a scoffer, there the ejaculation of a pious inquirer. The carol of the wine-bibber is followed by a stanza of tender love. In Fitzgerald, on the other hand, we are not sure whether we are reminded most of Horace or of Ecclesiastes. Of the flighty Persian freethinker, eclectic and unsystematic, we see little or nothing. After giving an historical explanation of the phenomenon of this unparalleled figure in the usually conventional literature of the East, he proceeds to show from his Rubaiyat what manner of man Omar was. An unparalleled figure. We must picture to ourselves the poet in his garden, looking out on a well-watered valley below Meshed, with vines and fruit plots around, and a bright sky overhead, assuaged by shadowy plane trees, while streams lapsed softly through the meadow grass. It was a retreat, yet with loopholes, for the neighbourhood of the town afforded some choice of society. Omar's hospitality was open to pleasant persons of both sexes, to all, indeed, but zealots. He was not one to confuse belief with faith. Heterodoxy is as bad in his eyes as orthodoxy. You may do what you will if you will be cheerful and undogmatic. He is the slave of freedom. To drink and revel and laugh is all my art. To smile at faith and unfaith my faith's part. I asked the bride what gift would win her love. She answered, "Give me but a cheerful heart." That he is ambitious, in the vulgar sense of sighing for the perishable advantages of wealth and station, no one can believe. He may desire to influence his fellow creatures, but it is as a friend rather than as a master. For personal comfort he looks not to luxury, but to love, not to the blind assurance of the bigot, but to the confidence of innocence and goodness. If in your heart the light of love you plant, whether the mosque or synagogue you haunt, if in love's court its name be registered, hell it will fear not, heaven it will not want. His questioning. It has been thought that Khayyam was a Sufi and only used the language of pleasure as a symbol for pantheistic aspiration. But he can be outspoken, and such questions as the following are neither equivocal nor ambiguous. This is the time for roses and repose beside the stream that through the garden flows. A friend or two, a lady rosy-cheeked, with wine, and none to hear the clergy prose. Unless girls pour the wine is naught, without the music of the flute is naught. Look as I may into the things of life, mirth is the only good, the rest is naught. The red wine in a festal cup is sweet, with sound of lute and dulcimer is sweet. A saint, to whom the wine cup is not known, he too, 1,000 miles from us, is sweet. Not but what he has his pious hours, for to nothing but true piety can we ascribe such thoughts as these. Thou hast no way to enter the dark court, for not to mortals does it yield resort. There is no rest but on the lap of earth. Woe, that its riddle is so far from short. Ah, Brand! Ah, Brand! If all that thou canst earn Be but to help the fires of hell to burn, Why wilt thou cry, "Have mercy, Lord, on me"? Is it from such as thee that he will learn? Of thy Creator's mercy do not hold doubt, Though thy crimes be great and manifold, Nor think that, if thou die in sin to-day, He from thy bones his mercy will withhold. His dignified attitude. Yet, convinced as he is of the need of pardon, and not always sure, in his human diffidence, that his Lord is anything but a magnified Sultan, who exercises man with wilful and arbitrary caprice, he preserves his dignity in the face of the appalling possibility. Although God's service has not been my care, Nor for his coming was my heart made fair, I still have hope to find the mercy seat, Because I never wearied him with prayer. Am I a rebel? Then his power is — where? Is my heart dark? His light and glory — where? Doth he give heaven for our obedience? 'Tis due. But then, his loving kindness — where? These speculations bring him to the old conclusion. Although my sins have left me faint and fell, One hope I keep — the heathen have it as well. In dying may I clasp my girl and glass — What else to me were paradise or hell? If I drink wine, it is not for delight, Nor unto holiness to do despite. I do it to breathe a little, free from self. No other cause would make me drink all night. They say that Tophet from of old was planned, But that's what I could never understand. If there were hell for those who drink, Then heaven would be no fuller than one's hollow hand. With wine and music, if our lives have glee, If grass beside the running brook wave free, Better than this esteemed no quenched hell, This is thy heaven, if heaven indeed there be. Enjoy the passing moment. He is not sure whether, even on this side of the grave, perfect bliss is to be had, and in such uncertainty it would be folly to strive. But he is quite sure of the wisdom of savouring to the utmost the passing moment, and, like Horace, he makes the precariousness of joy a reason for enjoyment. Since life flies fast, what's bitter and what's sweet? When death draws near, what matter field or street? Drink wine, for after thee and me The moon her alternating course will oft repeat. I dreamed of an old man who said, and frowned, "The rose of bliss in sleep was never found. Why then anticipate the work of death? Drink rather, sleep awaits thee in the ground." Ah, comrades, strengthen me with cups of wine Until my faded cheeks like rubies shine, And bathe me in it after I am dead, And weave my shroud with tendrils of the vine. Sweet companionship. But these contemplations, these delights, could not always be taken, or did not always suffice. Post prandia Kaliho. Like his European prototypes, the Persian philosopher found woman essential to his scheme. His paradise must never want an Eve with whom he could share alike his joys and his troubles. Clouds come and sink upon the grass in rain. Let wine's red roses make our moments fain, And let the verdure please our eyes to-day, Ere grass from our dust shall give joy again. Sweetheart, if time a cloud on thee have flung, To think the breath must leave thee, now so young, Sit here, upon the grass, a day or two, While yet no grass from thy dust shall have sprung. Long before thee and me were night and morn, For some great end the sky is round us borne. Upon this dust, step with careful foot, Some beauty's eyeball here may lie forlorn. This cup once loved, like me, a lovely girl, And sighed, entangled in a scented curl. This handle that you see upon its neck Once wound itself about a neck of pearl. It is to be feared that, like Anacreon, The Eastern poet found that, as old age drew on, the ladies turned to younger loves. Ah, that the raw should have the finished cake, the immature the ripest produce take, and eyes that make the heart of man to beat shine only for the boys' and eunuchs' sake. Vague but trustful hope. But the things of fate approach. No epicurism can do much to strip necessity of its stern aspect. Sin is sin, and the soul, in the solitude of the dark valley, turns to the inevitable with vague but trustful hope. His mercy being gained, what need we fear? His scrip being full, no journey makes me fear. If by his clemency my face be white, in no degree the black book will I fear. I ward in vain with nature, what's the cure? I suffer for mine actions, what's the cure? I know God's mercy covers all my sin, for shame that he has seen it, what's the cure? Yet even here science brings a message that is not unconsoling. He may pass as an individual, but the moon will shine on others, and the grass be fair and odorous, and the very body that has known so much joy when it was his will contribute to other joys hereafter. Is it not a shame, because on every side thy curious eyes are circumscribed and tied, pent in this dark and temporary cell, in its poor bounds contented to abide? O tent-maker, that frame is but a tent, thy soul the king, to realms of nothing bent, and slaves shall strike the tent for a fresh use, when the king rises and his night is spent. Here we come upon a stanza beautifully rendered by Fitzgerald. Speaking of the body, he makes the poet say, "Or is it but a tent where rests anon a sultan to his kingdom journeying on, and which the swarthy chamberlain shall strike then when the monarch rises to be gone?" Slight changes make great differences. The difference from the original is verbally but slight, but it will be observed to seriously alter the significance. Khayyam's play on his name, tent-maker, is sacrificed. So is the mockery of the soul's journey to an unreal kingdom. The word chamberlain is an inadequate substitute for the original farash, which indicates a class of slave appointed in the East for such duties, and to which the poet contemptuously likens death. A sample of Fitzgerald's manner of paraphrase may be interesting. The two metrical stanzas are his. The prose that follows gives the literal English of the original. O thou who didst with pitfall and with gin beset the road I was to wander in, thou wilt not with predestination round enmesh me, and impute my fall to sin. O thou who man of basest clay didst make, and who with Eden didst devise the snake, for all the sin with which the face of man is blackened, man's forgiveness give, and take. In my way-going thou hast laid the snare in many a place. Thou sayest, I slay thee, if I make the fault therein. The world is not free from thy command a tittle. I do thy command, and thou callest me sinner. O thou, of the sanctity of whose nature knowledge is not, and art indifferent both to our obedience and sin. I am drunk with sin, but sober with hope, in that my hope is in thy great mercy. Omar's philanthropy. Khayyam mocks at circumstances. Death is a slave. Even life, saving so far as it is a scene of calm enjoyment, is a mere bubble. The noise of the Franks in Syria is deadened by distance. The crimes of Hassan Sabah, the toils of Nizam ul Mulk, are ignored, while the poet surprises the secrets of nature, observing her economies of matter and her recklessness of man. But in regard to these hapless contemporaries, to whom the stern stepmother shows so little pity, he infers the duty of help, urging the indulgence of a brother orphan. Do thou beware no human heart to wring, let no one feel thine anger hotly sting. Wouldst thou enjoy perpetual happiness? Know how to suffer, cause no suffering. Here the veil shall fall, and our last glimpse of the poet show him in a posture of pity. He was summoned to Merv and employed in the reform of the calendar, and he died a natural death about 1123 at Naishapur, his old age being untroubled and his life unabridged. More than this an Oriental of that time could not hope from fate. The rest of his happiness must come from within, as we will hope it did. One of his disciples tells us that Omar said in his old age, "I would be buried in such a place that the north wind may scatter roses on it." After the poet's death, the disciple, visiting the grave, found that it was beneath a garden wall, and the fruit trees reached their boughs over and dropped their blossoms over his tomb, so that it was almost hidden. The scriptural worth of the quatrains. One of the curious features of Khayyam's life and labour is the fact of such heterodox and seemingly unprofitable matter surviving, with no aid from the printing press, through the havoc of 7 stormy centuries. Of this we may be sure, that no nation preserves a work of literary art unless it has endeared itself to many minds, and found an echo in the popular feeling. Not only have Persia and Khorasan been scourged since then with fire and sword, in which the frail life of manuscripts must have been in constant danger, but the outspoken heterodoxy of the Rubaiyat must have rendered them especially liable to the hostile pursuit of the Moslem Church. That they have, trifles as we may think them, been preserved amid all these dangers to furnish themes of enjoyment and of discussion in a state of society so unlike that in which they were born, and in which they lived so long, raises them to a position of almost scriptural dignity. And at last we behold them inspiring modern artists in the busiest centres of Western life. It was not at all likely that in their original amorphous state they would have pleased the generality of English readers. Mr. Winfield has prefixed to his translation this somewhat disparaging motto from Mr. Arnold: "A mind, not wholly clear nor wholly blind, too keen to rest, too weak to find." Fitzgerald's version and the original. Modern Europeans do not care to be troubled with reading that travails sore and brings forth wind. For the use of such it is more than probable that Fitzgerald's genius and skill have raised the only acceptable structure. Nevertheless, a sympathetic student of human history may be willing to cast a glance at the remote original, too far away in place and time, too bare and open for permanent sojourn, a grotesque nook abounding in quaint arabesque and coloured fretwork, yet none the less a shrine of undogmatic grace and harmlessness and peace. End of section. Section 7 of A Second Rubaiyat Miscellany. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Translations from Omar Khayyam by Frank Siller. Mr. Frank Siller of Milwaukee is favourably known both in Germany and the United States as a poet. His translation of Longfellow's Evangeline into German hexameters very greatly pleased the old poet himself, and has, since its first publication in 1879, taken its place in German literature as a classic. It is used in the University of Berlin as the best version of that poem. Many other admirable translations from English into German, and from German into English verse, have proceeded from his pen, and a few years ago he collected into a volume a representative selection of his poetry under the title The Song of Manitoba and Other Poems, which was published by the T. S. Gray Company of Milwaukee, 1888. It is now, unfortunately, out of print. The late Friedrich Bodenstedt, in the winter of 1880 to 1881, both before and after his visit to California, visited Milwaukee and Mr. Siller, at whose house he stayed, using his German explanation of the Persian original, as well as a manuscript of his complete translation of the Rubaiyat, made an English version of a baker's dozen of them, which were published in the Literary World for February 26, 1881, volume 12, page 71. The same also appear in Mr. Siller's volume of poems. He has been kind enough to copy these 13 stanzas for me, and to permit me to reproduce them. A potter near his modest cot was shaping many an urn and pot. He took the clay for the earthen things from beggars' feet and heads of kings. Know ye why the cypress tree as freedom's tree is known? Know ye why the lily fair as freedom's flower is shown? 100 arms the cypress has, yet never plunder seeks. With 10 well-developed tongues the lily never speaks. With mine own heart I am in constant strife. What shall I do? Remembrance of past errors blights my life. What shall I do? Though kindly thou, O Lord, my sins forgivest, their memory still within my heart is rife. What shall I do? Like wind flies time 'tween life and death. Therefore, as long as thou hast breath, of care for 2 days hold thee free, the day that was and is to be. No fear have I of life nor death, that dreaded flight of soul and breath, but not to do my duty here and die shall be my constant fear. Attempt not to fathom the secrets of heaven, but gratefully use what to thee is here given, for none have returned from that realm of bliss to tell how those fared who have prayed much in this. I doubt whether those who through every clime have wandered and sought, in peace and in strife, for gold and for treasures, have ever found time to study the genuine value of life. Many of our leading men are rotten cores in glittering shells. Wealth, position may be theirs, but in their hearts no comfort dwells. So perverted are they oft that only those they can respect, who like them for sordid causes all the higher aims neglect. Tomorrow's fate, though thou be wise, thou canst not tell nor yet surmise. Pass therefore not today in vain, for it will never come again. The prophet's followers seek Kaba's shrine. Bells call the Christian host in prayer to join. Cross, rosary, and pulpit will I praise, if they but prove safe guides to truth divine. That heart that has no power of self-denial severely suffers many a trial. The unselfish heart feels bliss without alloy, in causing others happiness and joy. The world will turn when we are earth, as though we had not come nor gone. There was no lack before our birth. When we are gone, there will be none. Friend, believe of dogmas only such as lift the soul to God. If thy neighbour should be needy, go, alleviate his lot. Shun deceit, be just and kind, and cause no fellow being pain. Then wilt thou contentment here, hereafter life eternal gain. End of section. Section 8 of a second Rubaiyat Miscellany. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Omar Khayyam, from Flowers from Persian Poets, Volume 1, by Nathan Haskell Dole and Bell Walker. There is probably no Persian poet so well known today as this so-called Eastern Voltaire, and that he should here occupy the place usually assigned to Anwadi simply demonstrates Omar's own philosophy, that no one of us knows of how little importance we are after all. In spite, however, of this philosophy, Omar, in the last half-century, owing to Fitzgerald's matchless translation, has been read from east to west. Even in the Rocky Mountains of America, a frontiersman, born and bred in that region, was heard to quote the following verse: "'Tis but a tent where takes his one day's rest a sultan to the realm of death addressed. The sultan rises, and the dark Farash strikes and prepares it for another guest." Giyas Uddin Abul Fath Umar bin Ibrahim, better known as Omar Khayyam, was born at Naishapur in Khorasan somewhere between 1017 and 1050, and he certainly lived into the 12th century. The only story of his boyhood is the following, which is probably legendary. Omar had 2 intimate school friends. These young men, while studying at Naishapur, each promised the other that if, in after years, any one of them became famous, he would share his prosperity with his less fortunate friends. years rolled on. One of them did become famous, Nizam-ul-Mulk becoming Prime Minister to Sultan Alp Arslan, and, faithful to his promise, he gave a government position to his friend Hassan ben Sabah, who later tried to supplant his benefactor but was unsuccessful and was publicly disgraced, after which he became the head of a set of Persian fanatics called Ismailians, who, under his evil chieftainship, were the terror of the early Crusaders. He was known as the Chief of the Assassins. Ultimately, one of the countless victims of the assassin's dagger was Nizam-ul-Mulk, the old schoolboy friend. And what was Nizam-ul-Mulk's gift to Omar? A pension that he might have solitude. It was all the poet asked, solitude in which to devote his time to mathematics, astronomy, and poetry. His Arabic treatise on algebra has been translated into French, and Gibbon says of the calendar which he and 7 of his mathematical contemporaries worked out, that it is a computation of time which surpasses the Julian and approaches the accuracy of the Gregorian style. Nevertheless, it never went into effect. Omar had the Oriental love for roses, and he is reported to have said, "My tomb shall be in a spot where the north wind may scatter roses over it." And it was, for one of his pupils tells us that, years after, when I chanced to visit Naishapur, I went to his final resting place, and lo! it was just outside a garden, and trees laden with fruit stretched their boughs over the garden wall and dropped their flowers upon his tomb, so that the stone was hidden under them. Omar took his takallus, or poetical name, of Khayyam, which means tent maker, from this trade, which he or his father is said to have at one time followed. This Persian custom of taking a takallus is adopted by almost all of these poets, because they introduce their name into their ghazels or poems, usually toward the end. And, as the proper name seldom sounds well in verse, they choose a desirable one. The Sufis, a sect 2 centuries old at this time, claim this philosopher as one of them, although during Omar's lifetime they feared his ridicule and hated his honesty, which scorned to disguise his doubts under their veil of mysticism. Indeed, Omar says, "If I myself upon a looser creed have loosely strung the jewel of good deed, let this one thing for my atonement plead, that 1 for 2 I never did misread." Still his countrymen find in his epigrammic verses an esoteric meaning he never meant. The Sufis interpret their Persian poets very much as the songs of Solomon have been interpreted by the Christians. But Omar's scepticism was real enough. It belonged to the age of religious darkness in which he lived. Christianity to him meant the Crusades. He, like Hafez, sang of woman, wine, and song. But he also pulled hard at the knotted threads of life which taught him this: "And this I know, whether the one true light kindled to love, or wrath, consume me quite, one flash of it within the tavern court better than in the temple lost outright." His idea of contentment we find in the following, as rendered by Emerson: "On earth's wide thoroughfares below 2 only men contented go, who knows what's right and what's forbid, and he from whom is knowledge hid." Westerners seem almost jealous for this Oriental. They resent the fact that a narrow eastern province should claim this astronomer poet as belonging exclusively to itself. They say, "He belongs to the world." Certainly reparation has been made to Omar and his famous translator, Fitzgerald, since the days when a discouraged bookseller in London threw the bulk of the first edition into a box outside his shop to sell for a penny apiece. Here they were found by Rossetti and Swinburne, and now copies of this first edition cannot be bought for $100. From such obscurity this Eastern singer has risen into a positive cult, with an Omar Khayyam Club in London, organised in 1892, and one recently started in Boston, called the Omar Khayyam Club of America. When one glances at the list of translators of this Persian genius, and also the different editions of his Rubaiyat, one can appreciate how true it seems that there's not a sage but has gone mad for thee. Selections from the Rubaiyat. An anonymous translation, but accredited to E. A. Johnson. 1. The sun has cast on wall and roof his net of burning light. The lordly day fills high the cup to speed the parting night. Wake! Cries in silver accents the herald of the dawn. Arise and drink, the darkness flies, the morning rises bright. 2. The rosy dawn shines through the tavern door and cries, Wake, slumbering reveller, and pour. For ere my sands of life be all run out, I fain would fill my jars with wine once more. 3. Tomorrow rank and fame for none may be, so for today thy weary soul set free. Drink with me, love, once more beneath the moon. She oft may shine again, but not on thee and me. 4. If wine and song there be to give thee soul-entrancing bliss, if there be spots where verdant fields and purling brooklets kiss, ask thou no more from Providence, nor turn thee in despair. If there be any paradise for man, 'tis even this. 5. Thy ruby lip pours fragrance unto mine, thine eye's deep chalice bids me drink thy soul. As yonder crystal goblet brims with wine, so in thy tear the heart's full tide doth roll. 6. What reck we that our sands run out in bulk or Babylon, or bitter be the draught or sweet, so once the draught is done? Drink then thy wine with me, for many a silver moon shall wax and wane when thou and I are gone. 7. To those who know the truth, what choice of foul or fair where lovers rest? Though 'twere in hell, for them 'tis heaven there. What recks the dervish that he wears sackcloth or satin sheen, or lovers that beneath their heads be rocks or pillows fair? 8. O love, chief record of the realms of truth, the chiefest couplet in the ode of youth, O thou who knowest not the world of love, learn this, that life is love, and love is ruth. 9. Though with the rose and rosy wine I dwell, yet time to me no tale of joy doth tell. My days have brought no sign of hopes fulfilled. 'Tis past, the phantoms fly, and breaks the spell. 10. Though sweet the rose, yet sorely wounds the thorn. Though deep we drink to-night, we rue the morn. And though 1,000 years were granted, say, were it not hard to wait the last day's dawn? 11. As sweeps the plain the hurrying wind, as flows the rippling stream, so yesterday from our two lives has passed, and is a dream. And while I live, these to my soul shall bring nor hope nor dread, the morrow that may never come, the yesterday that fled. 12. O joy in solitude! Of thee well may the poet sing. Woe worth the heart that owns no soil wherein that flower may spring. For when wassail sinks in wailing and traitor friends are gone, proudly through vacant hall the sturdy wanderer's step shall ring. 13. If grief be the companion of thy heart, brood not o'er thine own sorrows and their smart. Behold another's woe, and learn thereby how small thine own, and comfort thy sad heart. 14. Oh, swiftly came the winter wind, and swiftly hurried past. So madly sought my longing soul the rest she found at last. Now faint and weak as weakness' self, she waits but for the end. The bowl is broke, the wine remains, but on the ground is cast. 15. Through the unknown life's first dark day my soul did seek the tablet and the pen, and paradise and hell then read the teacher from his mystic scroll. Tablet and pen are in thine hand, and so are heaven and hell. 16. Hast seen the world? All thou hast seen is naught. All thou hast said, all thou hast heard or wrought. Sweep the horizon's verge from pole to pole, 'tis vain, even all thou hast in secret done is naught. 17. The architect of heaven's blue dome and ruler of the wave, in many a grief-laden heart doth deeper plunge the glaive, and gathers many a silken tress and many a ruby lip, to fill his puppet show, the world, and his chibouk, the grave. 18. Though I be formed of water and of clay, and with the ills of life content for aye, ever thou bidst me shun the joyful cup. My hand is empty, wherefore bidst me stay? 19. Much have I wandered over vale and plain, through many climes, in joy, in grief and pain, yet never heard men say, "The traveller who passed this way has now returned again." 20. Lo, blood of men slain by the stroke of doom! Lo, dust of men strewn on the face of earth! Oh, take what life may give of youth and mirth, full many an opening bud shall never bloom. 21. Drink, for thou soon shalt sleep within the tomb, nor friend nor foe shall break the eternal gloom. Beware, and tell to none his secret dark, the faded rose may never hope to bloom. 22. Fill high the cup though ache the weary brow, fill with the wine that doth with life endow, for life is but a tale by watchfire told. Haste thee, the fire burns low, the night grows old. End of section. Section 9 of a second Rubaiyat Miscellany. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Omar Khayyam, Some Verses and an Introduction, by W. E. B. Whitaker and Rex Lowenberg, Chester, Phillipson and Golder, 1907. This edition has 53 quatrains, printed on one side of the leaf only, and is limited to 6 sets. There is a dedication, Deux Amis, F.A.M. Part 1. Introduction. Omar Khayyam. It is now a matter of no little difficulty to write an introduction to the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. To each separate edition has been prefixed an introduction telling, in various ways, the same facts concerning his life and works. Every conceivable theological point has been discussed with more or less amplitude. Condemnations and appreciations have come forth by the score, and no new light is shed either on the dim outline of his life or the philosophic value of his work. And it is hopeless for one not thoroughly steeped in Eastern imagery, history, and tradition to do more than give briefly the sum of his own opinions in regard to the said verses. It is therefore not the intention of the present writers to do more than that. The few events in Omar's life have become familiar to such of the public as are attracted by the subtle versification of the Master of Moods through the essay prefixed by Mr. Fitzgerald to his edition of the Rubaiyat. It is a matter of doubt whether Omar's life can have been eventful to any extent. He was more famous for the thoughts he had not expressed on paper than for those he had, despite the lingering and wistful haunting beauty of the latter. He had no ambition, as it is now understood, neither did he care to move the world through the medium of politics. His joy was peace. The religious aspect of Omar's works is the most important factor in moralists' judgment of the value of his verse. They read into it what is not there and fail to see what is there. They see the selfishness, the cynicism, the contempt, and the licentious strain, and pass over the sorrow, the warm-hearted friendship, the unforgetting memory, the resignation, and the aesthetic beauty of the life. Omar was the prince of hedonists. Pleasure was his religion and his life, his work and his play. His creed was simple and beautiful. To speak of the pursuit of pleasure without a qualifying sense of disapproval is, in this modern England, a serious offence to many who still adhere to a puritanically hypocritical view of what they are pleased to call life. Yet surely the pursuit of pleasure is not without its virtues. When a hedonist sees poverty, it naturally jars on his refined artistic sense, and, if he be true to his creed, he will endeavour to remove such signs of misery. The beautifying life is to him a sacred duty, self-imposed, and with its own reward. Each little act of the common day carries with it an artistic sense of grace. Convention is regarded only so far as it conveys an aesthetic value in its rules, and is cast aside when it hampers and destroys the beauty of living. Hedonism is what people name the simple life. In it there is no discordant note and no pain. Here and there comes an act or a thought which appears superficially to be a breach of its smooth comeliness, but which is really a purposeful effort to break, by vivid contrast, what might otherwise degenerate into a cloying, oversweet monotony. Omar lived the simple life. His creed was simple. Here is the creed of Omar. I believe in wine and roses. Also I believe in woman. What a foolish thing to do! And in the God that made them I believe. Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam by Richard Le Gallienne. Wine, to softly fill his mind with magic scenes of beauty, pictures of roseate futures and hidden possibilities where no sorrow would be, and pain would only exist as a foil to increase the ecstatic sensations of joy. Woman to soothe him in his sorrows, to recreate them, and to smooth care away again. Girls were his handmaidens and his queens, his pleasure and hate, all things to all moods. A fair oval face, with great round soft eyes and pleading lips, hovered in his mind at all times and dictated his every action. God he thought of as one all kindness, who would never, in a fit of after rage destroy, even the faulty vessel he had condemned to a brief existence on his earth. In no place can one discover even a faint trace of doubt as to the final forgiveness of the Lord of all. To Omar, God was what he is not to the great majority: a friend to be trusted in silence, and to be left free from vain and querulous importunings. His greatest charm was at the same time his greatest fault. His power was confined to the delicate definition of certain moods of youth. If life were a series of moods, then Omar had mastered the secret of life, but moods are rather the interludes in a life than its foundation. To introspective youth sorrow is the subtlest form of pleasure, though they know it not. Youth finds, at times, a curious joy in sad reveries of past days, of faded flowers and lost kisses, and in musing glimpses of a future with its promise of fame and pleasure blended with a certain self-conscious self-sacrifice. One is so ready to look forward to a career of sorrow when one is young. It seems so noble, so poetical, so unusual. But age brings with it disillusion and the painful discovery that the world is not impressed by a conscious affectation of sadness and romantic melancholy. The world merely looks and passes on with the words, "It will pass away. He is young yet." And when one is old, and consequently wise and virtuous, one thinks and says the same. Omar, on the contrary, was a young man all his life. Through all his days he gazed and smiled on the ways of the world without change. About conventional religion he was gently satirical, about ambition rather dubious, and about fame he was careless. Women and wine he considered as means to an end. His prevailing thought was of the mutability of human life. He could not drink without thinking that the cup would soon be empty. He could not be happy with a friend because of the inevitable parting. There is no day without its faded flower, nor any joy without its closing hour. This cup of wine which joyfully you raise itself will emptied be for all your power. It is said that when Omar was young, he for many days suffered torments of doubt about his future. He had great friends who would have helped him if his ambition led in the direction of politics. He had others who would aid him as a merchant. Should he sacrifice his ideals as a poet and the dim possibility of eternal fame, and accept the certainty of worldly wealth and position? He knew not, and there was none to help him. At sunset on a hot summer's day, Omar lay on the flower-strewn banks of a softly flowing river. Through the sultry hours of the day he had lain and thought of the future, and now, overcome by the weariness of prolonged mental debate, he fell asleep. And he dreamed of a fair green country, and the sound of soft music filled his ears. Before him were gates of gold and ivory, which fell open as he watched. From their portals came a young girl clothed in white, with a girdle of precious stones. Her glorious hair, dark as the caverns of the night, flowed freely and gracefully over the lithe beauty of her body. A crown of crimson roses was on her head, and a garland of roses fell from her shoulders. In either hand she held a pomegranate. Swiftly she came to him and gazed on him sadly, with a gentle look in her great eyes. After a space she said, "Omar the tent-maker, I am sent to thee to bid thee make thy choice. I bear in my hands 2 pomegranates, the one ripe and full of joy, the other green and as yet sour. The first, over-rich, will the sooner die and leave no seed. The second will mature slowly and spread seed on the face of the earth. The first is called wealth, and the second poetry. Choose." And he chose the unripe fruit. The maiden knelt and kissed him, and he awoke to find a rose leaf fluttering from his lips. But that dream decided the course of his life. Henceforth, without fail, he would desert the world and find pleasure at the riverside with flowers and girls. And so, for the remainder of his earthly existence, he lived at Naishapur with a flask of wine, a book of verse, and his little moon. His schoolfellows rose to rank and power, and did not forget him, yet from them he took nothing. His fame as a teacher spread into many lands, yet it did not influence the smooth passage of his life. Day after day, his magic thought added ruby after ruby to his book of verse, and hour after hour his lot became fairer. Yet at times, even with Omar, pleasure palled and life became empty. On such a day he said to a disciple, "Many times as the sun rises on a new day, I long for a poison so subtle that I might pass over into the garden of dreams in a peaceful sleep, without pain and without sorrow, without regret and without envy, with a hope of endless sleep among the lilies and roses of that mystic world of dreams. And then, if in life I failed to attain, in death I should achieve my heart's desire. What are happiness and love, beauty and wealth, health and hope? Dreams, dreams, dreams. And I myself am a spirit unreal in a world of unreality." But such moods were only momentary. They departed with a cup of wine or a smile from some loved one. Years before his death he had hoped that his body might lie in a pleasant place, with roses growing wild over his tomb. "Ah, with the grape my fading life provide, And wash my body whence the life has died, And in a winding sheet of vine leaf wrapped, So bury me by some sweet garden side, That ev'n my buried ashes such a snare Of perfume shall fling up into the air, As not a true believer passing by But shall be overtaken unaware." Fitzgerald. He died at Naishapur in A.D. 1123, and still the wild roses bloom over his lonely grave. The flowers, sustained by the ashes of his mortal body, still hold the attention of the passer-by, while the immortal flowers of his imagination hold, and will ever hold, the world in thrall. The authors have endeavoured, as far as possible, to reproduce in the English metre, made popular by the genius of Mr. Fitzgerald, such quatrains of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam as have not previously been rendered in English verse. They have no knowledge of Persian, and are therefore unhampered by any pedantic restriction of the freedom of translation. They have endeavoured to convey the spirit of his work, if not always the form. There is no strict sequence in the arrangement of the quatrains, Omar's moods succeeding one to the other with the breathless rapidity of changing thoughts in the mind of a girl. End of section. Section 10 of A Second Rubaiyat Miscellany. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Omar Khayyam, Some Verses and an Introduction by W. E. B. Whitaker and Rex Lowenberg. Part 2. Quatrains. 1. The waking sun has touched the sky with gold, and dawn her wondrous vision has unrolled. Ah, haste to drink, while yet thou hast the time, before that last long night doth thee enfold. 2. To you, who now with faces sore downcast, wander awhile where merchants barter fast, a girl will bring, with footsteps soft and swift, a future fair, with flower and maid, at last. 3. Of all earth's secrets I have learnt but one, that sorrow never dies when sets the sun. Yea, this is all the wisdom I have found, and soon my days of learning will be done. 4. Why should our lives be now so much perplexed with thinking of this world and of the next? Life's little tale will far too soon be told, that we should weary it with vain pretext. 5. For not a star that burneth now on high shall cease to glitter when we too shall die. The sun its never-ending course will keep, and still the moon will brighten in the sky. 6. Ah, heart, my heart, the day draws near to night, and soon thou shalt be taken from my sight. O sorry fate, that we so soon must part, and I must stay and mourn my lost delight. 7. What if the Sufi's ceaseless prate be true? What if a God some day shall judge us too? But why should I my idle brain perplex? Beloved, have I not both wine and you? 8. Then fill the cup before the dying day shall take my sorrows and my joys away, and hope that when my years have ceased to be, some potter may make wine cups from my clay. 9. Drunken am I, yet quickly tell me, friend, did God himself a message to you send? Did he himself point out to you the way on which my wandering footsteps I should bend? 10. With strange features has my life been made, and through strange evils has its path been laid. Yet how may I be better than I am, for as God made me I have ever stayed. 11. All broken lie those promises of mine, long since forgotten in the lovely vine. Well, let them go. 'Twere better far I broke 100 promises than one fair jar of wine. 12. Sages have sifted all this world of dust, and found that naught is certain save the dust. But here are faces fair and rosy wine, why vex your mind with thinking of the dust? 13. Why ceaseless argue of the 5 and 4? What matter if there be 10,000 more? Will one be easier then to understand? Ah, leave these dreams, and seek the tavern door. 14. Within the cup there is such magic grace, that drinking I may see my loved one's face, and so my many sorrows I may lose, and in my dreaming find some short solace. 15. I drink of wine, and yet I do no sin. Happy am I when once the room within. And if you ask me why I worship wine, is not thine own self-worship greater sin? 16. For when my soul I drench with ruby wine, before my eyes there comes a dream divine, within mine ears sweet music ever plays. Shall I leave these for that sad world of thine? 17. The nightingale is singing on the tree, the roses send a breath of joy to me. Leave those sad shadows of the idle past, and take the joy of what we still may see. 18. Close to the river blooms a garden fair, what sweeter heaven may I find than there? What happier hours than those that I now spend watching the sunlight rippling on thy hair? 19. Why shouldst thou vanish with the closing day? Canst thou not spare a little time to stay? For lo, the angel hovers overhead, and soon shall come to take us twain away. 20. As I am now this picture once has been. Who knows what splendid lovers it has seen? Perchance the very handle that I hold has clasped the throat of some forgotten queen. 21. Then take the cup, and so let all thy fears be drowned in it, and mingled with thy tears. Who knows this clay that now is me may build a tavern wall in after years. 22. Ah, heart, my heart, how splendid falls the night, within her mantle holding strange delight. Let naught of earth this silent hour come nigh, let naught save wine be brought into my sight. 23. Silver and gold and ivory they bring, praises of God and future joy they sing. Yet while with me I have both wine and you, their bribes will I upon the desert fling. 24. Life to my lips once held a cup of wine, and deep I drank, deeming it drink divine. But yet the taste was bitter in my mouth, for it was grief, no daughter of the vine. 25. You tell me, friend, my face from wine to turn, lest afterwards in hellfire I shall burn. What if 'tis true? Does not this moment glad outweigh a future fate which none may learn? 26. If all the world shall burn with sudden fire, yet I will fearlessly of thee inquire, why thou shouldst have ever made this me, if it must perish at thy least desire. 27. Man with a strong desire thou hast endowed, and yet to fill it thou hast not allowed, and so we halt between desire and doubt, fearing to drink, nor yet to faith avowed. 28. Full often, when the stars shine overhead, I lie unsleeping on my restless bed, and think upon the cruelty of him who sets with sins the path whereon we tread. 29. For every breath a sense of sorrow brings, 'tis in the music that the bulbul sings, 'tis in the flowers that lie beneath my feet, and even in the palaces of kings. 30. I put my lips to yon fair vessel's brink, and found that 'twas but sorrow's bitter drink. So took I one long draught of this red wine, that straightway to oblivion I might sink. 31. If in the town thou dost achieve to fame, men think thee sinner and revile thy name, and if within thy corner thou dost sit, men say then that thou plottest some new shame. 32. Better thy hand with some girl's hair should play than vex thy brain with visions of the way. Better for thee to drink the vine's red blood, for death shall pour thee his dark wine some day. 33. Why reason if the tale be false or true? The years that are to come are all too few, and when they pass, and I to dust return, what matters it if earth be old or new? 34. Life's little song we know will soon be done. What if the end before this moon be run? Ah, seize the pleasure while you yet have time, for naught save sorrow comes when sets the sun. 35. There is no day without its faded flower, nor any joy without its dying hour. This cup of wine which joyfully you raise, itself will emptied be for all your power. 36. Seeing this world is neither thine or mine, how foolish I should be to drink no wine! What pity not to see my own heart's love, nor yet my fingers in her hair entwine! 37. O thou, who weepest now for sorrow's pain, raise up thine head, and give one thought again, for save through sorrow thou shalt have no joy, and but through sorrow life can yield no gain. 38. Drink not with all men that by chance you meet, drink in the tavern, but be silent in the street. And if a wise man poison brings to thee, take it and drink, and drinking, find it sweet. 39. Why sorrow with the griefs and pains of men, and toiling seek for God or heaven? For when the wrapper of thy soul to rags is torn, what matter to thee all thy past sins then? 40. The soft spring wind has made the roses flower, the bulbul sings the joy of every hour. Then rest beneath the palm tree's pleasant shade, and watch the red rose spread her golden dower. 41. Some see in life naught else save pain and tears, repeating sorrows and strange changing fears. Come then with me, and I will show you how to live in joy till end the weary years. 42. Queen of my life, the golden sun is setting. The day is done, but there is no forgetting. Night and her stars in silver splendour come. I have thy love, but there is no forgetting. 43. The fresh-born roses bring a breath of spring, the evening winds a breath of pleasure bring, and all the birds that round us quickly fly bear gladness in the throbbing notes they sing. 44. Some men for ever think this life a dream, and death the great awakening they deem. And when in joy I laugh and love and sing, these subtle thinkers tell me I blaspheme. 45. O dreamer, dream and think of faces fair. O drinker, drain a cup to faces fair. There is so very little time for aught, save subtle thought of transient faces fair. 46. If e'er I drank of joy, and lightly laughed, straightway did sorrow bring her bitter draught. If ever I dipped bread in salt, and ate, it tore my heart as wounds a dagger's shaft. 47. I hold no rose, and yet I have the thorn. I have no light, yet still the fierce flames burn. I have no hope of heaven or afterwards, so still my thoughts unto the cup I turn. 48. My sins are not enough to merit hell, and certainly in heaven I shall not dwell. Then where hereafter shall I go to, say? Is there not one of you wise men can tell? 49. Hast thou not seen a potter with his clay, making his jars and cups from day to day? And if, perchance, he shape one all awry, is it not straightway spurned and cast away? 50. Golden as sunlight is thy splendid hair, slender as cypress is thy body fair, and face more lovely than the waking rose. With you beside me, for naught else I care. 51. Around my feet is spread a field of flowers, showing my heart a vision of glad hours. When roses cast their blossoms all around, what use to me those visionary powers? 52. So while life is, let all your days be glad. 'Tis only Sufis who are ever sad. Drink, laugh, and sing, and let the grey world go. What matter if those dreamers think us mad? 53. Far through the mists I hear dead voices calling, shades of the long past years of love's enthralling. They bid me come, and coming sleep in peace. I come, I come! The veil of night is falling. End of a second Rubaiyat Miscellany. Read by Algie Pug.